So I was thinking this morning, about how our houses would have had families in, would have had lives in. Our houses have history inside them. Obviously, unless you've got a new build. But our buildings have complete lives that have been lived in them before us. Yet we walk around and probably don't even consider that. You know, I know I've walked around my house. You're in your own thoughts. You're not even thinking about the world. You know, let's say you're worrying about something or something's on your mind. You're thinking about the future. You're thinking about the past. Thinking about what you need to do in the day, tomorrow, whatever. Thinking about anything. But one thing you're not thinking about is the fact that someone else has actually been in your house and lived their own life. And what life did they live? That's what kind of interests me. What mistakes did they make? What experiences did they have? And what emotions did they have and feelings did they have about your house, the house you're living in now? Sometimes I think it is kind of crazy that we probably feel so disconnected, and we are so disconnected that we don't even think about the connections that could be there. I mean, in a sense, it's kind of crazy. You spend so much money buying a house and you have no connection with the previous owners. You have no thoughts about the previous owners. You don't even know who they are most of the time. Which I think is kind of nuts. And one of the conversations I was having yesterday with my family, because I thought this the other week, is how far up your family line do you know? I don't mean know of, I mean actually know. Do you know your grandparents' parents, or their parents' parents? You know, not saying you had to have met them, but do you have stories of your grandparents' parents and their cousins and uncles and aunties and all that, your actual family? How much of us don't actually know anything about our past line that could be known about? You know, I'm not saying let's go find out medieval times and Tudor times of what families were up to then. I'm just talking about, if I'm honest, people that have actually influenced your life in a way that you don't even recognise. You know, because your grandparents grew up in a certain way and were taught certain things, and certain trauma happened to their parents that was passed on to them, which then they passed on to your own parents, or certain ways were passed on to your own parents. You know, they were taught certain things and they mix that with certain genetics that they have. And it's a little bit related to you, because some patterns of teaching have to be passed on, have to be replicated. And I wonder if some of the behaviours that we have, or I wonder how many behaviours we have actually come from our grandparents' parents, or even grandparents' grandparents. You know, your grandparents would have known, or in certain circumstances, would have known their own grandparents. So they have stories. And I wonder how many people, when they have kids, talk about their own grandparents. And what thought came to me last week was, yeah, I'm thinking all about that and thinking, God, yeah, they don't know anything. but I don't know anything about my grandparents' parents. So, I mean, last night we sat there and we had a conversation about it. And we talked a little bit about little stories that they had. Because a lot of people only ever meet the grandparents, between the ages, between being born and, let's say, 10 years old, which is kind of crazy. Also, in a sense. And it is kind of up to the parents to teach you about your family line, about who you are, and stories of how people are. And I think that's why stories are so important, especially, I think, to me, in my mind. Stories have always been important for me when being taught something, or they're important to feel what different people are like and what different problems happen in life and different solutions and different personalities and what different behaviours have affected others that we can learn from. I think I think they're our main lessons. Our main lessons are stories and examples. You grow up to be like your parents. Most of us, that's what happens. Most of us grow up and adopt the behaviours of the parents. And your parents grew up and adopted the behaviours of their parents, and so on. So it's almost like you are all kind of similar. You'll all have probably similar traits, depending on how much your environment has actually shaped you. But you'll have hints of something from them. And the problems that everyone goes through on a day-to-day, I wonder how many times it has happened in the past in your family line. How many of your great-grandparents were anxious? How many of your great-grandparents had a bout of depression? Had sufferings that maybe they couldn't get over, or they did get over, and they know how and they can teach. And especially, I especially think about back in the day when talking about emotions and feelings and thoughts and stories probably weren't really forefront of people's mind, because times were probably so tough that you can't really be talking about your dire situation, because everyone's in a dire situation. You don't want to talk about it. So I think of what information is lost, and I think no wonder we have no idea of our past in a sense of humans. You don't really have an idea of the past before Christ was born, 5,000 years ago, 4,000, 3,000, 2,000 years before that. And you don't really have an accurate depiction of a couple of thousand, 1,000 years ago, or 1,500, 2,000 years ago. You don't have a full depiction and understanding of what life was like, truly like, because all history is written by the winners. So it is biased. But no families have stuff like that passed on. And no wonder, because us right now don't even pass things on from our parents, our grandparents, and, so on. It just interested me, because it is crazy that I don't know, for me, in my mind, I'm almost living a life, and sometimes you get caught up in it, that you forget there's been many people before you. And the problem you're probably stuck on, many other people have been stuck on themselves. You're not the first one to come across it, more than likely. But yeah, anyway, at work now, so peace.